What if I told you that at the exact moment Jesus was being crucified, it was not only the skies reacting? What if, in the unseen realm, just beyond human sight, above the blood-soaked ground and the cries of the crowd, two of heaven's most powerful archangels were present, watching, waiting, and responding? Michael, the warrior of heaven; Uriel, the flame of divine revelation; and the Son of God, suspended between earth and eternity. You have heard the story of the crucifixion many times before, but this time, you are about to see it differently. Because behind the physical events of Calvary, behind the nails, the blood, the soldiers, and the mocking crowd, something unfolded in dimensions rarely spoken about. Something beyond human logic, something that challenges tradition. Something that pulls back the veil on what truly happened that day. So think about it. Why did darkness cover the sky at noon? What was Jesus doing in the spirit while his body suffered on the cross? And what role did Michael and Uriel play when the King of Glory was pierced? Once you see the cross from this perspective, everything you thought you knew about Jesus and spiritual warfare begins to shift. Most people see the cross only from a human perspective. They picture a dusty hill, Roman soldiers standing guard, a mocking crowd, and a wounded man hanging between two criminals. And yes, that is true. But that is only what the natural eye could see. What if you could see beyond that? What if the veil between the physical and the spiritual was lifted? What if above that hill called Golgotha, a battle was unfolding, one far older than humanity itself? Step into that moment. Scripture tells us that at midday, darkness covered the land. Not a passing cloud, not a storm, but a deep, unnatural darkness that lasted for hours. This was not only a natural event, it was spiritual. In the unseen realm, something was building above the cross. In the dimension running parallel to ours, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Angels were no longer singing. They were silent, focused, waiting. The heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. This was not just darkness, it was a battlefield. Lucifer, the fallen one, the ancient adversary, watched from the shadows. For centuries, he had been moving toward this very moment. Since the garden, since the prophecy that one would come to crush him. And now there he was, hanging, bleeding, seemingly powerless, or so it appeared. But Lucifer was not the only one watching. Positioned in the unseen realm were two powerful figures. Michael, heaven's warrior, and Uriel, bearer of divine light and mystery. They were not passive observers. They were stationed at the edge where heaven meets earth, guarding a moment that would change eternity. Michael stood like a force of nature, covered in living armor that pulsed with power. His sword was already drawn, glowing with divine authority. Uriel radiated like fire. His presence blazed with knowledge, revelation, and the mysteries of God. For ages, they had watched God's plan unfold. And now, they were witnessing its most painful moment. The earth trembled. But in the spirit realm, something far louder was happening. As Jesus carried the weight of sin, the atmosphere shifted. Angels trembled. Dark forces began to withdraw. Something was not right. There was no resistance from Jesus, no retaliation. It was as if he was allowing it, and that was what unsettled the forces of darkness the most. Because restrained power is more terrifying than unleashed power. Jesus had authority, absolute authority. He could have called angels. He could have stopped everything in an instant, but he chose not to. And that silence echoed through the spiritual realm. Michael tightened his grip, ready, but waiting. Uriel remained fixed, his gaze locked on Christ, because they understood something deeper. They knew this was not defeat. Before creation itself, there was a divine plan, a redemption written in eternity. And at that very moment, it was unfolding. Jesus was not losing. He was accomplishing something far greater. Victory, in this case, required descent into suffering, into darkness, into death itself. And though Michael and Uriel understood the plan, they felt something unfamiliar. They could not act. Not yet. They were waiting for a command. Then it came. When Jesus cried out, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," it did not only echo across the hill, it pierced into the spiritual realm. It was not weakness, it was a signal, and Michael recognized it instantly. In that sacred silence, the king on the cross released an unseen command. There was no sound in the natural world, no thunder, no visible movement. But in the spiritual realm, everything shifted. Every angel, Every power, every dark force felt it. A command spoken not in words, but in spirit. It moved directly from Christ to the archangels above. The message was clear. Hold the line, protect what is mine. And heaven responded. Jesus hung between life and death. His body was broken, yet his authority remained untouched. Michael stood firm, not to attack, but to guard. Because something deeper than suffering was happening. A transfer, sin was being placed upon Christ. A covenant was being sealed, and Michael ensured that nothing interfered. Uriel's assignment was different. He carried revelation. As Jesus bore the weight of sin, Uriel released understanding across time, ensuring that the meaning of this moment would reach generations yet to come. Then it happened. Jesus gave up his spirit, and the veil in the temple tore. Not only physically, spiritually, the separation between God and humanity was broken. And the angels stepped back, not because they failed, but because the mission had been fulfilled, the bridge had been established. Though Jesus' body lay lifeless, his mission continued. His spirit descended into Sheol, the realm of the dead, not as one defeated, but as one in authority, and when he entered, everything changed. The underworld reacted, darkness stirred. Lucifer realized this was not the end. This was the beginning of something he could not stop. Jesus walked through the realm of death with purpose. Michael followed as witness, Uriel followed as revealer. When Jesus reached the gates, he did not hesitate. He spoke, and the gates opened, chains broke, captivity was shattered. This was more than a descent, it was a liberation. Jesus took authority over death itself. And in that moment, everything shifted. Resurrection had already begun. Not at the tomb, but in the depths. Jesus was never powerless. Even on the cross, he was in control. Even in silence, he was speaking. Even in death, he was working. Michael stood ready. Uriel revealed truth. And heaven moved according to Christ's command. Because the cross was never just about suffering. It was strategy. So now ask yourself, what impacted you the most? The unseen battle, the silent command, or the moment death itself was overcome? This was not merely a story of pain. It was a revelation of authority hidden inside surrender. It was the mystery of restrained power. It was the King of Glory choosing the cross, not because he was trapped there, but because through that cross, eternity itself would be changed. The unseen war had unfolded above Calvary. The command had moved through the spiritual realm. Death had been confronted, entered, and conquered. And when Jesus gave himself fully, the powers of darkness discovered the truth too late. They had not captured him. They had not defeated him. They had only watched him complete the mission that heaven had prepared before creation itself. The darkness at noon was not the end. The torn veil was not a symbol only. The descent into Sheol was not defeat. It was movement. It was purpose. It was victory advancing where human eyes could not follow. And that is why the cross cannot be seen only as a place of suffering. It must also be seen as the place where divine strategy unfolded in silence, where heaven held its breath, where angels stood ready, where Michael guarded the line, where Uriel carried revelation, and where Jesus, broken in body but untouched in authority, overcame the very power of death. So let this truth settle deep in your spirit. Even when God seems silent, he may still be moving. Even when heaven seems still, authority may already be speaking. Even when a moment looks like defeat, it may be the doorway to the greatest victory. Because at Calvary, Jesus was not losing. He was conquering, not with an army, not with thunder, not with a visible display of force, but through obedience, sacrifice, silence, and divine authority. That is the power of the cross. That is the mystery behind the darkness. And that is the victory that death could not stop. If this message opened your eyes, do not let it pass through you without a response. Comment below and share which moment struck you the deepest, the unseen battle, the silent command from the cross, or the moment death itself was conquered. And if you want more revelations like this, more hidden truths, and more mysteries of the Bible, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what comes next goes even deeper.